Now in this next illustration, this is a chart of sorts which does have a vertical and horizontal axis, but the data is overlaid on a map, and therefore the vertical axis represents north-south and the horizontal axis represents east-west. What is depicted here is the population center of the United States for a given year, and that means the point at which all of the people in the United States are equidistant. When the first census was taken, right after the founding of the United States in 1790, the population center was here, and it made sense that the capital of the country, Washington, D.C., would be near the population center, and so it was early on. Since that time, the population has moved quite a bit away from Washington, D.C. I will come back to that point in a minute. But over the course of decades, we see a distinct movement of the population center westward for sure, and more recently southward. Westward, why? Because more and more states joined the Union and then more people moved to them. But people moved to those states after they joined the United States for the most part, because even though California became part of the United States as far back as 1850, there were only 50,000 people living in California at that time versus about 40 million now. Other western states like Arizona and New Mexico, while not as far west as California, became states later than California. As we can see from this map over here, Arizona and New Mexico only became parts of the United States in 1912. Similarly, Alaska and Hawaii only became parts of the United States in 1959 and are geographically much further than the contiguous 48 states, so they should move that population center very far westward. But as their population is very low, we did not see an unusually large westward movement from 1950 to 1960. More people moved to California during that period than the entire population gain of Alaska and Hawaii combined, and Alaska being very far north and Hawaii being much further south, the north-south factor of both canceled each other out. But now, as we can see, the southern movement only began after 1950 or so. The latitude of the population center was pretty constant until 1950 and then started to move southward. Why? Because there was an invention, the air conditioner, that made it easier for people to live in hotter climates, and therefore some portion of Americans moved to places that are very hot in the summer, such as Arizona, Texas, and Florida. That was more difficult to do before the invention of the air conditioner. But now in the modern age, as we can see, the population center is not moving nearly as much. It is settling, and I contend it took this many years, almost a quarter of a millennium, for the United States to fully form, to fully settle into its population pattern. The population is still rising, of course, but that is only because of immigration. Absent immigration, the population in the United States would be falling right now. And also, you can see that it is settling in this location over here, which is far from virtually any very large city. The largest city from this population center is St. Louis, Missouri, which is around here. But that is a metro of less than 3 million people, so it is not a large metro. Chicago is quite a bit further away from this population center, as is Dallas, Texas. So strangely enough, the population center of the United States is in a place that does not have any large cities other than St. Louis, which is not very large and still a good 200 miles away from the population center. There is a strong case to be made that the capital of the United States should be moved to southern Missouri, because this is where the population center will be for at least the next 50 years, probably much longer than that. And maybe not the topmost bodies like the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives and the White House, of course, but many of the government bureaucracies could be moved out of Washington, D.C. over here, not only to be closer to the aggregate of people that they serve, but to prevent this deep state inbred type of thinking and the careerism that goes from hopping from one agency to another. And that would be a more efficient type of government functioning, but that is also why they won't do it. And again, I'm not talking about moving the historical building, I'm just saying the nondescript agencies, they should be over here. The Department of Agriculture, Department of Education, most of the Department of Justice, other than the Supreme Court, etc. A lot of those office type jobs that are not elected officials or Supreme Court justices could very well be over here, because this is the population center of the country. But that is a topic for another video as well. This chart is merely to show you how much the population of a very large country can geographically shift due to internal migration, and to a lesser extent due to territorial changes, even though the territorial changes were mostly before this big rapid westward and southward move. Thanks for watching.